Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back. Yeah, we all have intuition. That's what many of us believe. Sometimes we aren't in tune with it. Others are, like she is. She's a clairvoyant medium, life coach. She's a card reader, energy healer, and so much more. And she's going to talk about how we can figure out that intuition that we have and have to use it to our best advantage. Joan Widen is back with us. Hello, Joan. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks, Steve.
Good to have you back. And we left off talking
Thanks
about
for having me.
intuition, but we didn't go like super deep into it. And
That's correct.
then we kind of talked off air and realized a couple of things. Why don't you explain? Why don't you explain these weird connections here?
Okay, so you asked me about my son, right? And you wanted to know what about the connection there. So this is how you practice intuition. You figured something out.
I do want to clarify that I felt something about your son, and just out of nowhere, I said, "What's up with your son?" There's something. I don't know why. I don't know him. Never saw him. I wasn't even sure how old he was, but we were talking about intuition, and I was just feeling something, and then take it from there.
So then in our discovery, my son's middle name is John, and that middle name was given to him from my husband Steve's dad. And so Steve, your dad is John, right?
And I have the middle name John, and your son's first name is part of my name, right? So there's that, very close. There's that connection. And then we're also both born in September, both Virgos?
Correct. No, he is a Libra.
Libra, right. But he's on the cusp at the end.
That's correct.
He's born in September. I'm born in September.
That's correct. So
yeah.
It's very close. Yeah.
There is.
So there you go.
It's a weird connection. But when we were talking about intuition, I don't even know why I said, what's up? What's up with your son? I'm getting something. I'm not a clairvoyant. I'm not a medium. People say I'm intuitive or more intuitive than most people, but
right.
I'm not in tune with that. But I don't know why I said what's going on with your son. And I forget how I phrased it.
That's how it works, right? It doesn't necessarily have to make sense. And in order to tune in to your intuition, we have to practice. And so if you just ask those questions, then, of course, it's better to ask questions with someone that you can feel safe with, that they won't go, no, that's wrong. No, that's wrong. No, that's wrong. Because you need someone that's going to champion you so that you can exercise that muscle and get it going. Does that make sense? Because
Absolutely.
You need to feel pumped up about it, that you're like, yes, I can actually do this. Yeah.
And somebody who is supportive, because you may
Correct.
say something and you might not be on point, but there could be other things that you want to share that they might be able to validate or at least give their view of. And if out of the gate you say something, you're like, that's wrong. You don't even know what you're talking about. It's just going to shut you down.
That's correct, right? And so you really need someone that will go, even if it doesn't resonate with them right away, you just have let them go away, because 9 times out of 10, they have forgotten about that aunt or that situation. And then it goes like this, like a light bulb goes off and goes, oh my God, that's what it was. Do
you get that a lot when you talk with people where you bring up a name, bring up a connection, and they're like, I don't have anything. And then later they're like, oh, yeah.
Yes, I forgot about great Aunt Sally or
Yep.
my cousin's son that's passed away, right? So it's important to help people understand that, right? Especially when you're starting to learn your intuition. So back to that, you asked me about if I have spirit guides or angels, right? I do look to them. But honestly, when you're first starting, I would say forget about wanting to know about guides and angels at the moment and just focus on the body of light that's trying to communicate with you. Does that make sense? So when I speak to you, most times when you ask me questions, I will look away. And it's not that I don't want to look at you. is that's where the messages are coming from. Okay, so when you want to start, you want to focus on a wall that's blank, and then you just let the focus relax, and then you can get messages from that way, right? I had someone write on my YouTube page, "Hey, isn't hearing voices in your head schizophrenic?" And I went, "Absolutely, yes, that's correct." I said, "But these voices are not in my head; they come external."
How do you know? And yes, that's usually when somebody is having some, mental challenges, and we all go through
Yeah,
something at some point. That's the first thing. Do you hear voices? And then it's like, if
I
somebody
do, but
says,
I don't.
right. So how do you know where that's coming from? That voice, that intuitive voice, that spirit voice. How do you know?
Because it feels like it's beside it. It feels like I'm talking, like you're talking to me, right? So when that is a
Hmm.
voice, it's not like, "Hey, Joan," like inside. So, so when we get in our crap and we're in our head and we are kind of crazy this way, right? Like we're worrying about everything. That's in your head, right? It's different. It's not that. It feels like someone is standing right here or someone's actually just whispering. So if I'm going somewhere and I'm already feeling a little anxious that day, I will put in earplugs that make everything go down to 18 decibels, and then it cuts out a lot of people, spirits talking to me, so that I don't feel like I'm going to have a panic attack when I'm out in public.
Really?
Yeah, and my doctor's like, "What? I thought I was in your head." And I'm like, "Again, you would be committing me." In my head.
Joan's hearing voices again.
That's right.
And you know what they're saying? They're saying, wow, that guy Steve is good looking. Oh, um, are we all hearing those voices, but we're not tuned into those voices?
Yes. It's just because there's so much noise around us that we go, "All right, sure, whatever." But the odd time, you'll be walking somewhere and you'll hear Steve, and but there's no one around. Do you know what I mean? Like you'll hear like someone called your name, or well, I get that often, and there's no one around. But I will actually turn around and actually look, right? Most people will go, "Hey, what did you? I didn't hear anything. What are you looking at?" And I'm like, "Well, I just heard my name."
I'm not going to say this just because we're talking about this, but that
Mm,
happened to me. It was either yesterday or the day before. I'm trying to remember. And it wasn't, I don't think it was my name, but it sounded like someone was trying to get my attention.
right.
Like I clearly thought I heard something, and I'm like, and
What? Yeah.
there was nobody there. It was
Right.
outside, but there was nobody around. And it was
Yeah.
almost like a surreal moment.
Yeah. Like always say, "Did you hear a name?" Because a lot of people, that happens to a lot of people, right? But yes, for me, like I'll feel like there's a nudge or like someone's there looking at me, but there's no one there, right? So at the place I used to work, or you know, there was um something in there that would always turn on, especially when I was alone in the store, right? And I'm just like, seriously, like, I'm like, "Don't make me come over there." Turn that off. So, because it would freak me out because I'd be focusing and all of a sudden it would turn on. It was like it would play YouTube music and it would play heavy metal, like Metallica or something. And so I'm like, "Don't make me go over there to do it." And I'm like, "Okay, fine. You're gonna make me go over there." I'm like, "Don't make you leave." So then I start going and then it turns off. And then
Mm.
I'm like, "Okay, that's better." I turn around and sit down. But it's weird things like that, right? And they're trying to get your attention.
Can you ask them to present something? Like where are the way we're talking about it now is you need to be open for it. Messages are going to be sent. You got to
Yes,
be aware of them. What about if you're not so aware? Can you just say, Spirit, if you have a message for me, please reveal it now?
absolutely, right? You know those bumps in the nights that people I get oh, I heard that a noise or whatever, that can also be spirit, right? Like
Hmm.
when I was younger, I was so scared of the dark because I could they touch me, right? So I and it would freak me out,
Wow.
right?
Um,
So
have you heard this? Have
go
you heard
ahead.
this that there's a certain time overnight that they're more active than others?
Yes. And oddly, I like to be awake at that time. So it's around 3 a.m. So it's like between what, 2, 3, 3:30, 4. And if I'm not awake at that time, sometimes I wake up at that time and I go, oh my goodness, what time is it? And then I look and it's like 3, shortly after 3 or 3:30 in the morning.
Wow. And
But
and you legit know that that was some kind of
yeah,
spirit. Yep.
that's correct. Um, I have a weighted blanket that I sleep with and it's 25 pounds. So I don't
It's called
feel
it's called
anyone
it's
touching
called a
me.
dog. It's called a dog. No, I'm kidding.
It's actually a weighted blanket. And I
Well,
like it because it's like being hugged, but not. And if
even
someone
before we
touched it,
continue,
I you couldn't finish.
why? Like, why do you have a weighted blanket?
Why?
Yeah.
So because don't I wake up very easily. So I don't really, it doesn't feel like I'm actually sleeping because I feel spirits around me all the time. And so if anything moves or anything, I'm wide awake. And then it takes me a little bit longer to get back to bed because then I'm trying to go, what do you want? What can I help you with? I need to sleep. I need to get up at 7 a.m. What do you want? You
So
know what I mean?
the weighted blanket, it's so that the covers
It's
don't
like a
normally
protection.
move.
That's right.
Okay. So it's like
Or
this-
even touch me. You know what I mean? Like when I didn't have a weighted blanket, I would sometimes feel someone like touch my arm or my leg, and then I jolt awake.
got it. So this is are we to believe or understand that with the weighted blanket, spirit can't get to you
It's
as
harder
easy?
for them.
Okay.
It's harder for them because they'd actually have to, because it's hard enough for them to actually physically be able to touch you to move things, right? So now they have to lift up a 25-pound blanket
Wow.
to
Okay.
touch me.
Wow. Um, is it always the same spirits? Do you know who they are?
Mm, it is not. It is not always the same because I can tell. So family members, they know, and they will tell me. Like, so one of my guides are is my grandma. Okay, I wear her when I feel really nervous or I have a big reading or something is going on. I wear her watch,
Hmm.
and
Wow.
so it's like a talisman for me, and it helps. Do you know what I mean? And then I ask her if there's something that's really um I'm not quite sure about. I ask her, can you help me and guide me through this? And then help calm my nerves as well. Does that
Is
make
she
sense?
is she your go-to spirit?
She is.
Yeah. And that would be my mom.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. For me. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I actually have a pillow on my bed that was made from my mom's shirt.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's like that's your watch. So, and
It
many
is.
times
Yeah.
I'll be in bed and that's where I'll think, or when I need, some assistance, I'll say, make tomorrow turn out okay, mom, if you could, or send me a sign that it's going to be all right, whatever it might be. But usually it's usually I'm just kicking back and that's when
Hmm.
I vibe
And
her
you're
when,
relaxing.
yeah, or when I need to, it's usually there. But I don't do it unless I really need assistance. I don't just say, "Hey, check in. I want to say hi." Yeah, just don't do that. It's like feel like you know, don't want to over. It's like the genie has three wishes. Don't want to overdo my if there's a
There's
quota.
no such thing.
I know, but I feel guilty. I don't want to, I don't want to abuse the connection because, and even though it is my mom, I when I
She
ask, I
would do
get.
anything for you. Pardon
When I
me?
when I ask, I get.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Interesting. How many
Yes.
spirits you think you have?
There's quite a few. Okay, so speaking of spirits, so a medium is different than an intuitive, right? So an intuitive slash psychic, they get their messages from a group of people, right? That's the best I can explain it. Whereas a medium gets it specifically from like from either not necessarily a guide, but from like say your mom when your mom
Right.
is speaking through me, right?
Somebody passed over
So
that has a message for you that needs
that's
to
right.
come through.
So
Okay.
it's an individual versus a group.
Got it. So intuition is actually many different
Mm-hmm.
forces.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Interesting.
And when you use your intuition, and so how I do it is you're trying to there, it's like playing Pictionary with a spirit on a body of light, right? So they're trying to give you a message and you're going, okay, well, I'm trying to figure this out. But since I'm visual, they can show me pictures. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So that's why I asked you on our when we first spoke again, I'm gonna say like I asked you if you looked like your dad because your dad showed me a picture of himself and then he just highlighted his face. So then I went, oh, so you look like your dad.
And
Does
they
that make
do.
sense?
And they do.
Yeah.
And I never realized it until I got older. Um, but sometimes like profile pictures and things like that. And my son looks like me. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like,
It's slowly, yeah.
generational kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the kind of how it comes. So when he told me, he showed me a picture of himself, but it looked more like you. And then and then it was glowing, right? So then I'm like, oh, okay, because then that's my sign that says he looks like him.
I
Does that
want
make
to go
sense?
back to the intuition thing. Now I find this fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
When we use our intuition,
Mm-hmm.
I want to confirm this that it's a combination of different spirits
Yes.
providing you with an answer or insight, whatever it might be. Because
Yeah.
I always thought intuition was your feeling inside. Just you have a way of we all do. Some of
Mm-hmm.
us are more in tune of getting an answer or having a
Right.
feeling, but you need to
Right.
believe the feeling and you need to trust the feeling and continually trust yourself in what you're getting and not question it.
Right. So it it is yours, but you're getting the information from somewhere else. Does that make sense? So, for example, I sometimes I don't necessarily like shaking hands with people because I get information. So now I tell spirit, unless it's like stranger danger stuff, I don't want to know. Right. So when I was younger, in my 20s, um, my future in-laws at that time, they're like, we want this priest to marry you. And I went, okay. They're like, yeah, well, I'm like, well, I kind of like ours and they're like, no, no, no. We like this one because he's been in the family for a long time. And they're like, well, invite him for dinner and you can meet him. Well, I shook his hand and I was like, I pulled my hand away. And then that was it. I was like, mm-mm, no, thank you. And I
So
pulled it because because I already felt there was something wrong and I didn't want to see the rest of it. Does that make sense? And they're like,
hmm,
why don't you like him? I'm like, I don't know. There's something wrong. I, I just don't like him. Right. And then a few years later, it came out that he was a pedophile. Right. And then they said, I'm so sorry. Right. But I didn't allow him to marry us. He could be the co-priest. He wasn't allowed to be the main one.
I'm ordained,
But
by the way. I am. Um, you just to your point here, and not to that
mm-hmm,
level, but I believe that my daughter has intuition
mm-hmm,
and that she's an empath.
mm-hmm,
And she has said before, she would make a comment about somebody, that person is creepy.
mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
this is a couple of years ago, and I was like, whatever, they're okay. They're a little odd, but yeah, no problem. Um, it revealed itself that they weren't a good person.
Right.
Not to
Right.
what you
And
just
so,
said, but
but still.
And she said it recently about somebody else, and now it's on my radar. And I did a little researching.
Yeah.
And again, not at the level of your example just before about the priest,
Yeah.
but I did find out things about what she said, and all she said, that's creepy. And she's right. There's
Right.
something off.
Exactly.
Not
Right.
not generally off, but just a little like radically in some regards.
Right.
Um,
It felt dangerous to her.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
uncomfortable, unsafe,
Right.
maybe unsafe.
Unsafe.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So when my kids were babies and they would smile at everyone, but when someone went close to them, because strangers would come up to me all the time, right? If someone came up to them and they started crying, I'd be like, back off. And it's because I'm going, okay, because when they're younger, when your children are younger, from like the day they're born to around 8, 9, they that's when they start losing all their intuition, right? Because of worldly stuff, it gets squashed. So when they were younger, if they just did not like someone, I wouldn't make them go to that person. And I wouldn't allow that person to be around them too much. Does that make
Hmm.
sense? Because I gave them space. Yeah. And that's why
Wow.
you would see some babies laughing and giggling and they're looking in the corner. But that actually could be grandma, grandpa, great grandpa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I totally believe it. And I even think too, based on what we're talking about,
Hmm.
even with animals, even a dog,
Yes.
a dog could be everything's great, somebody walks in.
Right.
Why?
There's yeah. Some dogs, like my little guy, he just barks at everything because he's a nervous dude. But yes, it's the same thing, right? They know if you're stranger danger.
Well,
Instant.
I feel that animals are the best readers of energy out of anything.
Hmm.
They don't have other things to worry about so much, except eating and pooping. Uh,
Right?
and they live in the present. They're not, all this other stuff out here
Absolutely.
is not there. And when they pick up on it, it's the same thing where, like, if you're sad, your dog comes over and kind of puts his, head on you, whatever.
Right. Exactly.
They pick up on things. They really do.
Exactly. Cats are
Hmm.
more intuitive than dogs, but
You think so?
yes. And then and horses are more. So if you
I've heard
actually
that.
need some healing, it's great to be around horses because they are natural Reiki masters.
I believe that very much so. And that's why horses are very therapeutic
Hmm.
for people who are going through challenges. And I know somebody
Hmm.
who is a animal communicator, and
Yep.
she gave me an example of horses. And she walked in, and this horse was always wild, and that's why the person, that owned the horse called. And she said, as soon as I went in, I woke up, and the horse just turned his head and just like, all right, you got me. He just chilled out because he could pick up on her
Yeah.
energy and
Hmm.
that she was there to help
Yep.
connect.
And they
Wow.
enjoy it. They love it. They want it. Right.
Hmm.
Sometimes they need a break from the crazy. And so when someone that's calmer comes in, they're like, oh,
Yeah.
it's like I can breathe.
It's like that feeling when you go to get a massage, it's just like, this is gonna be good. Um,
Yes. But yeah, like intuition, it's there, it comes to you, but it doesn't necessarily just come from just you. It's coming from above.
I
Is that?
find that I let a lot of stuff just fly away. What
Mm-hmm.
by that I mean, as we're talking, I'm thinking about the connection to your son and all these other little things here.
Mm-hmm.
You want to call them little? And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. That's cool. When I start, take a step back and think about it, it's like, whoa, like that was pretty cool. How
Yeah.
there are connections there in terms of the name, the fact that I even just said, what's up with your son? I don't know, it was random, but I felt
Yeah.
something. I felt
Right.
something. Um, Final question, because we're just about out of time.
Already?
What it says. um, you said you put earplugs in,
Yes.
quiet things out. Somebody told me recently if you want to get an answer from
Mm-hmm.
intuition, spirit, or whatever, that
Mm-hmm.
you need to block out the light. and you can use a certain type of mask, and they're like 15
Okay.
bucks.
Okay.
Mindfold, I think it is. I think it's called,
Mm-hmm.
where you can keep your eyes open so that you can see your third eye, but
Okay.
it's blocking out all the light. Do you see your third eye? Do you sense it in any way?
Okay. So for me, I don't focus on those different things because that's another like that's another thing that if you can't see it, it blocks your intuition, right?
Hmm.
So for me, it's really finding a blank wall, staring at it and letting your focus go a little bit, and then it just comes. I don't concentrate on the third eye, different chakras, because they'll just tell you eventually, like when it comes. Does that make sense? It just comes.
I agree with you. I
Like,
do.
because if you put all those things, it's too much, too distracting.
I find myself recently focusing on something and
Mm-hmm.
way more easier zoning out, or I guess
Mm-hmm.
getting into, I don't know if it's meditation or whatever, but I'm in a place where I feel more connected with things around me in my mind and everything. I could be even at the gym working out, and I
Mm-hmm.
will focus on something. I don't even know I'm working out. I just start thinking and I start feeling things. Maybe it's
Right.
intuition, but it's the focus. Once you focus on something, you're able to block it all out. So yeah, I agree.
That's exactly what it is, right? And for intuition, that's what you need to do is just block out the noise so that you're back within your body,
Yep.
right? And then your body can tell you because spirit is telling your body, right?
It
So,
isn't it amazing when you connect with this, how you're able to really connect? Like I had a medical thing procedure January, and they had to give me 12 shots in my back. Like,
mhm,
I got to do another one. Oh, it's not numb enough. All right, another one. And I'm like, oh, that's going to be great. All I
mhm.
did was look at the ceiling and focus on something. I didn't feel anything. It's
Yes.
amazing once connect with the
I
power in your
I've done that. I got a tattoo and they're like, "Do you want us now?" I'm like, "No." I'm like, "I don't have time. I have to get back to work."
right.
So I got a tattoo and they're like, "But you might pass out." I'm like, "No, I won't."
Yeah.
But I'm gonna tell you, at what a couple points I was like, "Holy crap!" And just because I don't have time to.
And I got to tell you, I'm like the biggest baby in the world. And it's like once I did that focus thing, it was all
Hmm.
good. Like, yeah, all good. Yeah. Didn't feel it, a little pressure. That's it. Um,
Right.
Best way for
But
somebody to learn about their intuition, harness everything, even readings, just go to your website,
hmm
right?
correct. Yeah. Shoot me a text or whatever if you have any questions.
Hmm.
I'll happily answer them for you.
And your website is your name, Joan
That's
Widen,
correct.
WIDEN.com. Always great
Correct.
talking with you. Like I learn a lot.
Always.
And like I'm like I feel more connected when I talk with
Right?
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
This
Me
intuition
too.
thing is real. You got to listen to it. They're gonna cut us off. I don't need intuition
Okay.
for that. I already figured that out. Uh,
All
looking
right.
looking forward next time we talk.
You bet.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.